You're here. Welcome to the Masterminding Success podcast. They say if you want to be successful in business and in life, then surround yourself with successful people. So pull up a seat. The mastermind is about to begin.
Hey, glad you could join us for another episode of the Masterminding Success podcast. We're your hosts, Keith Wheeler
and Nuria Colby.
And what are we talking about today, Nuria?
Today is another great topic, and I think I can talk about this one quite a lot, and it's how resourceful are you? So what can you do with what you have? How do you get round difficulties in that way? So I don't know. I think you're quite resourceful, aren't you, Keith?
I have my moment.
Yeah.
And there's a couple different ways you can approach this. One is, like, especially if you're first starting out, financially, you may have to be resourceful. You know, I get so many questions on, how do I pay for my first book to be published or whatever, when I don't have a budget or I don't have a big budget. And that's when I usually say, well, how resourceful are you? What skills do you have? And how open-minded are you when it comes to getting the skills taken care of that you don't have? I know my first children's picture book, which was done, the artwork is definitely professional, and I got it done with very little money up front. I happened to be lucky. I found an illustrator that was willing to do what's called royalty shares, and so I gave him a little bit up front, and then we kind of eked out a deal with the royalties for until X amount was reached. And so that was something that, I can't promise everybody can find, but it really comes down to, if you look hard enough and you ask enough people, chances are you will find someone that's willing to kind of think outside the box. I will say one way that I was able to get him to do that was I'm just going to use round numbers. So let's say he said $300, which it was way more than that, but let's say $300. I told him, well, how about if I pay you $500? So I've already got his attention by offering more. Mm-hmm. And then I laid in with the royalty share idea. And so, normally if you just say, how about a royalty share? They're going to, immediately going to be no, because they want their money now or when they're done with the project. But when you're, kind of piquing their ears, getting their interest by saying something like offering more than what they asked for, especially if it's significantly more, then they're willing to kind of figure out how much they're really willing to wiggle and to get more money in the end. So that's just one thing that I had done.
That's a good example. So there are ways, I think, because, and I think sometimes when I think back on my journey, when I started with low content books, and there were a lot of things that I needed to start with. So I needed something to design my books with. At that time, I wasn't using Canva. I hadn't even heard of Canva. And I was using PowerPoint because that's what I had. And I watched a video that somebody making a book with PowerPoint. So that's how I started. And that's, of course, free. And well, I say free, but it comes with a PC sometimes. And then what else did I use? Well, the images that I needed, the graphics. So that's another problem, because most of the time you need to find a license that goes with them. And that was a bit tricky because there are lots of places online that offer free images, but you don't necessarily have commercial license for them.
Right.
So then what I did is I found sites like the Hungry JPEG, Design Bundles, and that's just a few, that offered freebies now and again. So every week or so they had Freebie Friday, or they had some kind of freebie going. And I used to take all the freebies and collect them in a file on my computer. And then when I needed something, I used to look through all of those files and see what I could find. And that was a way of using free things to get me started. So I did try and use everything for free. I had no research tools. And I think the first research tool that I used was definitely a free one because I didn't buy anything.
Right.
So that must have been something like Keywords Everywhere, something like that. And at the time, now you have to pay, I think it's $10, but you get quite a lot of searches. But at the time, it was free. And so that's how I started looking for lots of free stuff. And the way to do that is to really Google everything.
Right. Yeah.
And even just to, how do you do this? How do you do that? Google was my go-to. So I think I could say that I was being resourceful by finding all the answers on Google, really. And I think if you can do that, because I realize now that not many people do that. I always thought, well, if I can do it, everybody else can do it as well, because the answers are all there, everything's online. But actually, I found that not many people do that automatically. A lot of people ask questions on Twitter or on Facebook when you think, wow, well, you're on the internet, you could have typed that into Google and found out. But not everybody thinks that way.
Right.
And I thought that was obvious, but it's not. And a lot of people sometimes don't realize that you could find that on Google, or they think it might be too difficult to find. So there are different reasons why people don't do that, but I can really recommend all of you who want to find out how to do something, Google is your first, or whatever search engine is your first point of call. And there's just so much information. YouTube is another one. So, you know, whatever you want to know, you can probably find on YouTube. I even find out things like how to fix some plumbing issues at home or anything like that, which we're doing quite a lot at the moment since we've moved. So yeah, YouTube is another really good resource if you know, if you're asking the question, how resourceful are you? I think anyone who knows how to use Google, YouTube, all of those search engines, they're quite resourceful, because they are all resources at your fingertips, and most of them are free. So that's my go-to.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with all of that. I mean, you know me, I've used PowerPoint for forever. I mean, I use it for creating my children's picture books.
It was probably your channel I watched.
It very well could have been. So I use PowerPoint for my even now. I mean, and I have paid software to use, and I'm just more familiar with PowerPoint. It's kind of like that, that nice comfy blanket, you're used to using. So I use that for my picture books. I use it for my puzzle books. And it was just something that was on my computer. Now, let's say you don't have, PowerPoint or Windows, Google Slides is the same thing, and so, just being resourceful with what you have, really sitting down and taking note of what your needs are, and then asking yourself, what do I have access to that will fill that need? And you may find things that you didn't even realize could be used for that purpose. For example, the example of PowerPoint are used for presentations, but with a little bit of changing of the design size and things like that, you can use it for a lot more,
or a lot of things.
But a lot of an absolute lot of things. But and then as far as using search engines, I mean, I get so many people asking me a question on my channel, and I love answering questions, but there are many times when I look at it and I'm like, you could have just searched this up, because there are times that honestly I don't know the answer. I mean, I'm willing to admit when I don't know the answer. And what do? I go to Google. I go to Google, and I literally, but what I do now is, and this is after answering thousands of questions, is if it was something as simple, especially if it's a KDP question, and the answer is actually in KDP, like you go to the search bar in their help, and you can get it there. I'll include a link to that when I answer their question. And that does a couple things. One, it kind of reinforces with them that, it's a KDP question, look there, but also I know that, you always have the saying that, there's no stupid questions. And I believe that, but I know there are people that think that I've got a stupid question. And so someone else might have that same question but not have had the guts to ask me.
Exactly.
So it's right there in the comments to be able to refer to. So I mean, I love answering questions, but yeah, there's definitely those people that those times that I think you spent more time writing this comment to me, which I appreciate because it's engagement, so YouTube loves it.
Yeah.
But you could have just literally copy and pasted that and put it into, KDP or put it into, whatever search engine. But yeah, it's it really comes down to, again, assessing what your needs are and what you have or what you have access to that can fill that void, fill that need.
Absolutely. And I didn't want it to sound like I don't want people to ask questions. Of course I do.
Yeah.
But I want people to know how they can help themselves, because I think that I wouldn't be doing my job right if I didn't show people how they can get answers. What if I'm not there or there's nobody else to ask? There's ways that you can get your answers, and one of them is obviously Google. And another point you made, which was quite interesting, you said something about it's your comfort blanket, using PowerPoint because you've used it all this time. And, sometimes that is a danger as well. When you're in your comfort zone, you're kind of not stepping out of that comfort zone, and you're kind of hoping to find the answers in your comfort zone. And very often they're not in there. They're somewhere else.
Right, because you would have already found it.
Yeah, exactly. You have to step out of that comfort zone. And that's why I encourage anybody, if you have a question, of course, ask on our podcast, ask on our channels, absolutely. And by asking, you're helping other people as well that may not be asking. But at the same time, also, if you can't find if you need an answer quickly, or you need a lot of information on that, Google is your friend, or any search engine, or YouTube, and you can definitely find a lot of answers there. And it's a way of finding the answers quickly, and you're learning from it, because it's not the same someone telling you do this and the other, but you actually doing it and following the steps. It stays in your mind longer. That's what happens to me. I don't forget things that I actually search myself rather than someone doing for me, because next time round I can do it myself then, and I find that very helpful. And
even if you don't have that mindset where it's easier for you to remember, because you've already searched it up, you know where to find it. And most computers, they're going to have the cookies on there, so when you do a search, it's going to pull up pages and pages of answers. But if you found the answer on the third option down, it'll usually, when you go back the next time, it'll usually instead of being blue, it'll be like an orange color, depending on what your computer looks like, but it'll look different. So you'll not only know that you can search it up, but you search it up and you'll look and you'll see the exact one that you clicked on before. So those are things that where again it really helps with the muscle memory, where you just get used to it. It becomes a habit. And like you, I love answering questions, but again, the other thing is we're talking about your business. I don't want your business 100% reliant on me, and you shouldn't want that either. Relying on my availability, or to answer your question, or relying on my knowledge. I might not know the answer right away, so I might have to look it up myself. And so I'm fine with ask me the question, but don't wait for an answer from me. If you need an answer now, go find it. And then when I come back to you later on that day or whatever with an answer, I either am reconfirming what you've already found, or I'm giving you a different take on it or whatever. And so you're getting more points of view as well by doing it both ways.
Yeah, definitely. And I think being resourceful is also about looking where you don't expect to find things sometimes. But definitely look where you do expect to find things, and that would be KDP itself. If your question is related to KDP, have a look in KDP's help section, because the other thing is we keep doing things the same way over and over, And suddenly KDP might have changed something, and it's not done that way anymore. And
especially lately.
Oh God, especially lately, yes. And the more you look on their help pages and see if there's any updates, the better it will be for your business, because you're then up to date and you're not just listening to what somebody else says. The one thing that really sometimes annoys me quite a lot is when people say, oh, people are saying this and that. Is that true? I can honestly say when people are saying this and that, usually it's not true.
Right.
It's usually just built on rumors and on, don't listen to people and what they say. Don't listen to me even and what I say, because I could be wrong. Go straight to KDP and see if you can find the correct answer there, because people make mistakes. I can make mistakes. I can look up something and next week it's changed and I'm still doing it in that way. And, you know, I could be telling people the wrong advice. I try not to, but, you know, it could happen. So I think one big tip would be to go to the place where you need an answer about whether that's KDP or whether that's something else. It could be Etsy, or it could be another business that you have questions on. And there's always, people usually sell on platforms. So the platform that you're selling on will have rules, regulations, help pages. Everything is out there. So if you go directly to the source, that's the best way. And then sometimes you can look for alternatives, you know, so that's another resource that you have. If you're resourceful, you look in other places as well, and then see if you can apply the same thing to the platform you're on. So, yeah, I think it's all about, I mean, people say thinking outside the box, and it's not always thinking outside the box, but sometimes it's just looking through the box. It's just, you know, just
sometimes it's easier than what we make it out to be.
Yeah.
You know, we're thinking that, you know, we see, especially when we're first starting out, we see this giant hill or this giant mountain that we have to climb, and come to find out it's just like a speed bump. You know, it's you know, it looks bigger and more grandiose because we're new to it, or because we're scared. And so, you know, all of those are valid reasons, not to take away from the reasons, but yeah, we need to, you know, sometimes, like you said, just, that's why I say, you know, look with what you already have, you know, if you know, and don't be afraid to spend time, you know. I know time may be a luxury that some people don't have, and I get that, but with many people, I've noticed it's not that they don't have time, it's that they don't make time, you know. And it's, you know, you can steal time from other things. Like, for example, how often are you playing Marvel Snap? How often are you on TikTok? How often, you know, all these little things that can eat up 5 minutes, 5 hours of your time, that can quickly free up, just by cutting that in half. You quickly free up all this extra time that you can use to create, to search for what you need. And so that's something that I think that most people underestimate, is the amount of time that we waste. You know, I have an iPhone, and iPhone tells me at the end of every week how much time I spent on my phone. And it actually breaks it down into what apps I was using. And so I've been able to, by seeing that, been able to, you know, I'm still on my phone a lot because I use it for answering YouTube questions. I use it for email. I use it for my full-time job with their messenger. And so I'm still on it quite a bit, but the downtime that I'm on it, you know, the stuff that's not related to my business is a lot smaller now.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And that is such a good tip to give to people. You know, you don't have to be on your phone, or you don't have to be on all these places all at once, because sometimes it doesn't matter. But the other side to that is that I find that sometimes when I get sidetracked by something, if I'm trying to find the answer for something on Google and suddenly I see something else, nothing to do with what I'm looking for, but it's something to do with something else. And then I spend 2 hours looking at that. And then afterwards I feel really bad, because I think I've just wasted all this time looking at that. But the funny thing is, usually, sometimes that comes back to help me. So I always say no time is wasted, because it's all in there afterwards, and it's more knowledge that you've acquired in some way, and it might be useful some other time. So I don't ever think time is wasted, but I do think that we can streamline our time more and apply it and be more resourceful in that sense, that we, that we get straight to the point more than we do. I notice that a lot with now that I've moved house and everything. I've had very little time to be online, and I feel like I've missed out a lot. But when I actually analyzed it, I haven't really missed that much. I kept up to date with all the changes. Of course, that had to happen while I was moving, all the changes that Amazon was making. So everybody was like asking me lots of questions, and I wasn't really in any position to answer. But it worked. We're still carrying on with the business. I still kept things moving forward. So it's about being resourceful, but it's also about applying the resourcefulness in a good way, in a way that doesn't waste your time, and you get things done, basically. So it's that bit about moving the needle again. What do you need to do to move the needle, and what is unnecessary. So
no, I agree, and thank you for kind of honing. I had an ADD moment where I was just like going off topic a little bit, and you're always great to bring us right back to being on topic.
It's okay.
But yeah, I agree, obviously, about, just when you were talking about the changes with KDP, actually made me think, going back to what we were saying before about not necessarily trusting everybody and doing the research yourself. Perfect example is, I just finished up a new nonfiction book, teaching people how to create puzzle books and do have a business around that. And my editor, who luckily is in the author world, when it got to the section about categories, she reached out to me and said, you want to change this? Because I was still talking about how you can ask for 10 categories, and you can't do that anymore. And so I had to go back and rewrite that little section, and it wasn't even a section; it was just like a paragraph. But yeah, I mean, that was a good catch, and had she not caught that, and that book got out there, people would be trusting 100% what's in there. And KDP changes, and not just KDP. I mean, I know we like to pick on KDP because they're Amazon, but let's be honest, they do change a lot more than everybody else. But Lulu changes, Ingram Spark changes, and not always, not necessarily for the better or for the worse, but they change, and so, our jobs, as being hosts of channels that are, dedicated to that, is to try to be on top of it and try to know it as much as we can. But we're only human. We make mistakes, and, or maybe we didn't hear about things. I know, when the last change that came through with KDP, I didn't know that until a viewer told me, and so while yes, the most resourceful thing you can do is search for yourself, like you said, look into it yourself, look for the software, look for free versions, things like Canva. There's a paid version, but there's a free version. When you said earlier about getting on these email lists where you get free images, Deposit Photos does that as well. You don't actually have to sign up, to the best of my knowledge. You don't have to sign up and actually have bought any credits from them. You just have to give your email list or your email address and go on their list, and they will send you, I think it's once a month, these, sometimes, rarely are they videos, but usually they're images. And so, if that's, and some of them aren't going to be helpful, but hey, it was free, what does it hurt? And so it really comes down to, like I said early on, figuring out what you need for your business, and then figuring out ways to accommodate that for, little to no money. If budget is your issue, if time is your issue, then, you just adjust that, then maybe you're not going for the free things, because the free things usually are going to take more of your time. Then, like, for example, if you're doing keyword research. It's going to take longer to do it yourself on Amazon. You can go on YouTube and watch videos that both of us have on the subject, or you can get Publisher Rocket. Publisher Rocket costs money, but saves you a lot of time, and so it really comes down to, when it's being resourceful, being more resourceful with your money or being more resourceful with your time.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. But at the same time, I think when you're first starting, first of all, in my case, I didn't have the money to buy any tools. And I think the
Right.
first tool I ever bought was Tangent Templates. And I'm so glad I did, because I thought that was brilliant. But I didn't have any money, and I needed to earn money before I could buy some tools. And at the same time, I felt like, well, how am I going to make money if I don't have those tools? But there's always a way. If there's a will, there's a way. That is so true. And you can Google alternatives or free alternatives, or maybe they're not the same, but there's a roundabout way of doing things. So I think, when this subject came up, how resourceful are you? I thought, well, what makes a person resourceful and another one not so much? And I think part of it is bravery, to be brave enough to actually think that you can do it, because sometimes we stop ourselves and we say, oh, no, it can't be done. I can't do it. And really, it can be done. There's always a way to do anything.
It's easier to say I can't.
Yeah, I think that is maybe it. Sometimes we just don't do it because we think it's easier. It's like, that's my story, my relationship with the gym. I want to be thin and toned. I have to work out and go to the gym, but I can't do it. so I never get there. So that's how people stop themselves from reaching a goal or what they want to do. And there's always a way to do it. I might not have to go to the gym. I could go for walks. I could, do exercises sitting down. Whatever you can do, you have to do. There are always ways of doing something. I've never found that there's nothing I can do about something if I really wanted to do it.
Right.
And I think that is bravery. Second, also, you need to know how. And to me, that is going online and researching. I don't know, what else can you think of that would make someone better at being resourceful?
Unfortunately, and I wish this weren't the case, but I have found the people that are the most resourceful are the ones that don't have a choice. When you're kind of stuck in that, you lost your job or whatever, you're stuck in that where I have to do this, I have to make this work. And what I would love is for people to not be in that position, but still be able to channel that feeling, so that way you're not 100% reliant on it, but you've convinced yourself that you are. That way you still try, you still become more resourceful. But I obviously, you never want anybody to be, to hit rock bottom, as they call it. But for the people that have been the most resourceful that I've run into just in life, not just in this business, but in life, it's those people. It's the people that had no choice. Like, I've got to make this work. I've got to find a way to, to create books and find a way to get sales from it. And I have no money, so again, and I know I use the reference of money a lot in this, but that I've seen is usually the biggest, I don't want to say the biggest hurdle that people have, but it seems to be the biggest excuse that people are giving. And I don't say that in a derogatory way, that not having money is the biggest reason why they've said that they're not successful, or why their books haven't been better or whatever. And I really think it's just, and I do think it comes down to just not knowing, not knowing what other options are out there. Again, like you said, search engines are they're your best friend. They need, you when in doubt, search it up. I mean, I know we say Google a lot because Google's the world's largest search engine, but they're, you can use Bing, you can use, all the other ones as well. But also, YouTube, I mean, YouTube is owned by Google. So the second largest, search engine is owned by the world's largest. So, I mean, there's a reason for that. And it's because it works. I mean, it's helpful. There's content out there. If you are thinking of something obscure, can almost guarantee you that there's at least one website devoted to it. But also social media groups, ask there. But again, that kind of leans into the now you're putting the trust in
other
people. I mean, I technically, if you're trusting a website, a person did that too. So but at least, especially if it shows up the way search engines work, not to get too far into that, this isn't an ADD moment, I promise. But the way they work is, just like with Amazon, in that, the things that are the most relevant to whatever you search for are going to be up towards the top. And so the way that they've been relevant is because more people have gone there, they've left reviews or whatever. And so that's why we're saying use like a search engine, because rather than a Facebook group or whatever. I mean, Facebook groups are great. I run a couple, you run some. But, just anytime you hear something from just an average listener or an average person, always take it with a grain of salt. Just like if you watch my channel, don't take everything I say as, oh, it's law. That's the way it is. Fact check me. I'm fine with that. And if I'm wrong, let me know, because I want to know that so I can get better. But yeah, so absolutely, when in doubt, just search it up.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there. What it takes to be really resourceful is often, not having a choice, not having any other choice. That is so true. I think we've all been there. So
yeah, absolutely. More than once for me, but
more than once. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, this has been another great mastermind, Nuria. Once again, a huge thank you to all our listeners and viewers who came to tag along. If you enjoyed today's mastermind, please consider following or subscribing to the podcast, and maybe even leave us a review and let us know what you thought. Until next week, I'm Keith Wheeler.
And I'm Nuria Corby.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining the Mastermind today. Be sure to follow the podcast on your platform of choice and tell a friend who would enjoy it too. Your support is greatly appreciated. This has been the Masterminding Success Podcast.